This message today. Hi Mel, will you please check the video post here by Israel with Aline titled Hunting for Goliath the Giant, We Found Him, Exploring Israel with Aline. There is mentioned that there was a tradition by the early Christian pilgrims to Jerusalem that they throw 3 stones to the tomb of Goliath when they passed his tomb. The 3 stones refer to how David defeated Goliath. And that reminds me of something that just happened in Mecca just a few days ago. Very interesting. Well, I'm going to investigate that now. I think this should open up a new avenue of discovery. Thank you for that heads up. Before we get to that, let's just remind ourselves of what Odin Lafontaine had to tell us about the significance of Jerusalem in relation to Safa and Marwa, and then we'll move on to the stoning of the Jamarat.
Every time we read temple or forbidden place of worship in the Quran, we know now that it points to Jerusalem. So Hajj and Umrah might have been customs pertaining to Jerusalem. Hajj might have been a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And what is the Umrah then? Well, we will see it. At first, let's have a look at what happens in Mecca. I guess the viewers of the channels already know that Safa and Marwa are mounts in the Haram of the Mecca, just near the Kaaba. And this is where the pilgrims are supposed to make a kind of circumambulation according to the verse 158 of the second surah. Indeed, the Safa and the Marwa are from the symbols of God. So whoever performs the pilgrimage of the temple or performs Umrah, so no blame on him that he walks between them. And because of this, the pilgrims in Mecca do a kind of circumambulation between those two hills, but they are not really hills. There are some rock mounts, small rock mounts. Here is Safa, here is Marwa, and now the Saudis have built a kind of hallway to protect the pilgrim and to organize the circumambulation.
It's a bit like the Las Vegas version of the Eiffel Tower.
Kind of, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a very it's like an amusement park nowadays.
Yeah.
This is what big money does. This is the Saudis. But the thing I want to point here is that those are supposed to be mountains or mountains, and they're very, very, very small rocks. In fact, for a mount, it's very small.
They're just boulders, really.
Whereas in Jerusalem, we have mounts. We have the Mount of Olives, of course, I've already told you about. This is a satellite picture of Jerusalem. Here, for example, you can see the Temple Mount, which is now the Mosque Esplanade, what's the name of this place? We see here the Dome of the Rock. Here is Mosque Al-Aqsa. This is the old city of Jerusalem. Here we have the city of David. So the Mount of Olives. Here we have the old Jewish cemetery and the Mount of Olives. And we have the Mount Moriah, the famous Mount Moriah, the one we spoke about.
Sounds just like Mount Marwa.
This is exactly the same word. Moriah, Marwa, those are exactly the same word.
Yeah.
So this is the Temple Mount. This is the place of Abraham, the standing place of Abraham that we talk about. The biblical tradition tells us this is the place of Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
And we have also a Mount Safa in Jerusalem. It is not very known, but it should be well known now. This is Mount Scopus. Scopus in Latin or in Greek, Scopain. And in Hebrew, it is called Mount Safa.
Every guy has this problem, right? You wore a hoodie because it was cold. Now it's warm and you look like a douche. Here's how it works. You fold the hoodie. It takes about 10 seconds.
Well,
And we find it, for example, Josephus' Jewish Antiquities. So we have in Jerusalem a Mount Moriah and a Mount Safa. And what's between them? The Cedron Valley. The Cedron Valley, Nahal Kidron in Hebrew, is described by Prophet Joel in the Bible as being the valley of decision, the place where all nations will be gathered, the place of the apocalypse. So when we look at this, and when we look at the verse describing Safa and Marwa, we find a very different sense than the standard Islamic narrative has given to the Safa and Marwa circumambulation. What does it mean to be at Mount Scopus and to go to Mount Moriah, crossing the Cedron Valley? It means that the last days are coming. It means the apocalypse is about to begin.
this is ground zero for the apocalypse, so it's
ground zero for the apocalypse, exactly.
The problem with all of this is that if Islam began as a messianic project, then how does the stoning of the Jamarat fit in with all of that? And as you can see from this clip, it is a very central part of the Hajj.
1. The person enters into Ihram and makes their way towards Mina. Day 2. The Hujjaj will leave the plains of Mina and head towards Arafah, where they will arrive by Dhuhr time, and they will engage in lots and lots of ibadah and dua. Then the Hujjaj are expected to leave Arafah and head towards the plains of Muzdalifah. They will remain and sleep under the stars. Day 3. After Fajr, the Hujjaj will leave Muzdalifah and head back to Mina, where they will pelt one of the 3 Jamarat. After this, they will perform Qurbani and then shave their heads. And then they'll go to Mecca, perform Tawaf, and then return back to Mina. Day 4, the Hujjaj will pelt all 3 Jamarat in Mina. And lastly, day 5, the Hujjaj will pelt all 3 Jamarat again, return back to Mecca, complete farewell Tawaf.
Of course, if Islam began as a messianic movement, then what greater story could there be than the defeat of Goliath by David, who of course killed him by slinging a stone into Goliath's face. Now, it just so happens that there is a tradition surrounding the burial place of Goliath that involves the throwing of stones. In fact, this went on so much that there is a hill full of stones from centuries of this practice. And that's what we're going to look at next.
Today we are going to take a biblical journey together, but not to follow kings or prophets, rather to find the giant Goliath. We will look for clues in ancient manuscripts and archaeology to find the exact place where Goliath, the Philistine, was buried. So if you are ready, let's get started. We are now walking on a road that is thousands of years old, and this path connected the valley of Elah to Jerusalem. About 2,000 years ago, the Romans improved the path and built these stairs that we are walking on now, and they paved more parts of this road. And to show you how important this path is, it is still in use to this day. Not the 2,000-year-old stairs, because they are preserved. But you can see and hear as well. You can see that right here next to us runs the modern road. And if we go up it, we still end up in the same place. We arrive in Jerusalem. And why is this so important? Because in the valley of Elah, one of the greatest battles in the Bible took place. The battle between David and the giant Goliath. And as we know, David, with his sling, hits Goliath, who falls David cuts off his head and takes it where? To the region of Jerusalem, and from there he presents it to King Saul. When the Philistines started coming toward David, he ran quickly toward the battle line to face him. Taking a stone from his pouch, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead so that it became embedded, and he fell face down on the ground. So David defeated the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him, and drawing the Philistine's sword, finished him off by cutting off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that their warrior was dead, they retreated and fled. David took the Philistine's head, brought it to Jerusalem, and kept the Philistines' weapons in his own tent. As soon as David returned after killing the Philistine, Abner brought him before Saul. David was still holding Goliath's head. And because of that, there is a high probability that David chose to go up to Jerusalem by the easiest and most accessible route connecting the 2 points, which is exactly this path. But if Goliath's head went exactly along this path, what happened to the rest of him, to his body? And that's what we're going to find out together now. One of the questions we need to answer is, how can we know if this 2,000-year-old Roman road really existed in David's time? And for that, we can read the studies published by the Israeli Ministry of Antiquities. From them, we can see that the Romans rarely invented new routes and roads. Instead, they used the routes already used by the local populations and merchants, which were often improvised trails. And then the Romans would pave them, widen them, and make them official. Besides, this is the route that makes the most topographical sense, since the Valley of Elah is a natural corridor between the coastal plain and the mountains of Judah. If the route went another way, there would be many more valleys and hills with lots of ups and downs, which was far from ideal at that time, when everything was done either on foot or riding animals. And another clue is precisely the many archaeological sites from the time of David that are built along this route, like Hirbet Kayafa, which is the biblical Sharaim, and it watched over and protected this road. And because of all this, we know that this road isn't 2,000 years old, but actually well over 3,000. We continued on our way until we arrived at this place, which is called Horvat Hanut, or Kirbet Hanut, which means the ruins of the resting place. And you can clearly see the ruins here behind us. But what are these ruins? They are the ruins of a church from the Byzantine period, which is the first Christian period in all of the Holy Land. The question is, what is the point of building a church here? In a place that, at least at first glance, seems to be in the middle of nowhere? Up here is the road we were on. It goes through here. But all around us, everywhere else, we only see trees, forest, nature. But yes, there is a very special reason why the church was built right here. And it was the Byzantines themselves who recorded the history of this place for us. More specifically, pilgrims to the Holy Land. For those who don't know, I'm a tour guide here in Israel. I accompany many pilgrims who come from different parts of the world to visit the churches and holy sites and learn about the history. And sometimes people think this is something modern, but it's not. Since the beginning of Christianity, there have already been Christians who go on pilgrimage, going up to the historic holy sites to visit them. And this was very common during the Byzantine period. And we have diaries from more than one Byzantine pilgrim who visited this church and told us about their visit. And what do they tell us? That right next to the road was the church. And next to the church, which we know today as Kirbet Hanut, was the tomb of Goliath. They already told us, even back then, about the tomb right here next to us, which they used to visit. And they didn't just visit. There was something else they used to do here, which we're also going to do at the end.
Well, what they did was they threw 3 stones at the site. Does that remind you of a practice done in Islam today? It should do. This isn't entirely strange for Christian pilgrims. Even today on the Camino de Santiago de Compostela, there is a site called the Cruz de Ferro, where pilgrims today throw stones at a particular site. I've done it myself. In the context of this, it was a symbol of your sufferings and pains in your life, that the burdens of your life. So symbolically, you throw a stone to represent that. But it's not foreign to Christian pilgrims. The pilgrim that mentions this in the 6th century, we mentioned in a previous video in relation to seeing the Saracens in the 6th century and having marble idols. So it's interesting how he also saw this other practice.
That it was a heap of stones erected by passing travelers, and later Christianized with the addition of a cross. This would be perhaps from the time of Bishop Goselmo, who established a hospital and a refuge for pilgrims in Fonsebadon back in the 11th century. Today, the Iron Cross is a symbol of the Way of St. James, and just 200 meters later, it separates 2 such characteristic regions as Maragateria and Bierzo.
And now together we will first visit the church and then the tomb of Goliath, just like the pilgrims of ancient times used to do. Let's go. This was the central part of the church, and look how beautiful it was. If we get closer, we can see that the entire floor was covered with a mosaic. And a mosaic made with the finest details depicting plants, animals, and fruits. And so we can see that this was an expensive mosaic. And that's why it wasn't just an inn, a place for pilgrims to rest, but rather an important place. And in fact, the importance of this place is also related to Goliath being buried here next to it. And now, to find out where Goliath's tomb is, let's listen to what one of those ancient pilgrims wrote to us, Antoninus of Placentia. Goliath's resting place is right there in the middle of the road, and there's a pile of wood at its head. There is also a pile of stones, a mountain so big that there isn't a single pebble left for a distance of 20 miles, because anyone who passes by makes a gesture of contempt, picking up 3 stones and throwing them at his tomb.
After Fajr, the Hujjaj will leave Muzdalifah and head back to Mina, where they will pelt one of the 3 Jamarat.
We are by the side of the road, and now we have to look for a mound made mostly of small stones, because when we find it, we know we'll probably be in front of Goliath's tomb. Let's look for it. What we see is a small artificial hill. It is 7 meters high and 9 meters long. And the archaeologists who studied this area came to the conclusion that, without a doubt, this is an artificial mound. And also, looking at it, we can see that it is different from the surroundings. But not only is it different from the other hills, it is different from all the other tombs we know of in the Holy Land, especially from this period, the time of Goliath and King David. This mound is quite strange. Come closer. I want to show you how strange it is. If we look here, a large part of the mound is made of stone, or at least covered with stones. You can see here we're removing it and there are layers of stones underneath. And these stones are not natural to this place. If we look around, there are 1 or 2 stones, but this amount isn't found anywhere else. And there's a good chance these stones were thrown against this hill, just like Antonino told us. And not just him, other people also told us that when the pilgrims passed through here on their way, they would gather 3 stones. They looked for stones, more rounded pebbles, prettier stones, and also stones that remind them of David's story, because David threw rounded stones, pebbles at Goliath. So they would come, sorry everyone, they would come, throw them here onto the stones, and in this way the mound also grew over the centuries and millennia. This was a very well-known tradition during the Byzantine period. Many Christians would come here to visit this church. However, it was destroyed by a massive earthquake in the 8th century, and after that this place began to fall into oblivion, but not completely. Local people who lived here in the nearby cities kept this tradition alive, passing the story from father to son, from generation to generation, and saying that there in Khirbet Hanut is the hill where Goliath is buried. And in fact, there was another traveler who passed through here in the 19th century, a French explorer named Victor Guérin. And he was very famous in his time and visited this place in 1863 and described the Roman road, the ruins, and a huge pile of stones, which, according to tradition, was the tomb of the biblical giant Goliath. And he also tells of the tradition of pilgrims throwing 3 stones onto the pile of stones. What we have in this place is a very interesting and quite ancient tradition. But we can't be sure that the giant Goliath is really buried here. The only way to prove whether this really is the place or not would be through archaeological excavations. But there are no plans from the Israeli government to excavate here in the near future, and honestly, I think this place will never be excavated. So we don't know whether this is Goliath's tomb or not. What we can say does make a lot of historical and archaeological sense is that along this path here on the road behind us, Goliath's head was carried along here by David on the way to Jerusalem. Even though I don't know if Goliath is really here or not, or if the tradition of throwing stones is in the right place, just to be sure, I'm going to throw my stones here today too. And to help me, we have a very special guest.
Hi, sweetheart.
Everyone say shalom to my father.
Shalom, everyone. How are you? Look here, I brought the stones.
It's already prepared.
It's an age-old custom. Let's go.
Let's go. So you throw 2, I'll throw 1 here. So guys, just like pilgrims did in ancient times, we will do the same. So Goliath, here we go.
Take that, Goliath. Take that, Goliath.